Ladies and gentlemen, you welcome to this edition of the 6 p.m. primetime newscast on Equinoxe Television, live from our headquarters in Cameroon's economic capital, Douala. I am Bable Jonathan. In our top stories in this edition of the news, the African Union says the turnout in the municipal and legislative elections of February 9, 2020 in the Republic of Cameroon was very low, and the Continental Organizations attributes the low turnout to security tensions in the country, notably in the northwest and southwest regions of the country. And Human Rights Watch accuses the Cameroon government of failing to protect voters who decided to stay in their homes. And after 6 days of a lockdown in the whole of Anglophone Cameroon, the town of Kumba life has timidly returned to the town of Kumba in the Mime Division, southwest region of Cameroon. In this newscast, we're going to show you the picture of Kumba during and before the lockdown. Stay with us. The Observatory Mission of the African Union has published its report on the February 9 municipal and legislative elections in the Republic of Cameroon. And in that report, the mission says that the turnout in all places covered was very low. And according to the Continental Organization, this is because of the security and political tensions in the country, notably in the southwest and northwest regions of the Republic of Cameroon. Details with Innocent Aze.
According to the African Union Elections Observatory Mission, the twin elections in Cameroon were marked by security and political tensions, that is, before, during, and after voting. This, it says, stems from the far north region, northwest and southwest regions, masterminded by Boko Haram and the Amazonian separatists, respectively. The AU Election Observatory Mission indicated that pre-political tensions were staged by militants of the Cameroon Renaissance Movement Party, who called for boycott of the twin elections due to inability by the government to solve the Anglophone crisis. The AU mission added that participation rates of the twin elections was very low in localities it covered, contrary to statements of the Ministry of Territorial Administration and the Director General of Elections Cameroon that voters massively turned out and exercised their civic duty hitch-free across the national territory. According to the AU Elections Observatory Mission, still, it monitors elections in 176 polling stations, 79% of which were in urban areas and 21% in rural areas. It reveals that 87% of polling stations were besieged by defense and security forces professionally for hitch-free voting. The AU Elections Commission, in its recommendation, demands reform of the Electoral Code. In its report made public Tuesday on the legislative and municipal elections of Cameroon, the Pan-African Organization proposes revision of electoral texts, adoption of a dialogue and consultation framework, grouping all actors in order to establish confidence and the transparency in electoral procedures, strengthen the management body by complying with the provisions of the African Charter on Democracy, Elections and Governance. Also, for necessary measures to be taken to guarantee participation of all citizens, as reaffirmed by the communiqué adopted by the Security and Peace Council of the AU during its 869th meeting that held on the 19th of August 2019 on elections in Africa.
In the same vein, Human Rights Watch discredits the February 9, 2020 municipal and legislative elections in the Republic of Cameroon. The organization has said that the government failed to ensure the security of potential voters in the two Anglophone regions, and so they decided to stay home on election day. For me, Armstrong Sander.
Human Rights Watch, in its report on the 2020 twin elections in Cameroon, directly accused the government of Cameroon for failing to guarantee the security of the people of the northwest and southwest regions. The right group affirms that inhabitants of the Anglophone regions failed to take part in the municipal and legislative elections due to threats from separatist fighters. Human Rights Watch also highlighted that Cameroonian forces of law and order committed a considerable number of abuses on Sunday, February 9, 2020, due to the absence of a surveillance system, hence requesting the government of Cameroon to consider creating such a surveillance system. The international rights group recognizes that the boycott call by members of the Cameroon Renaissance Movement political party and separatists in the Anglophone regions with a factor primo, the over 3-year-old Anglophone crisis, has greatly affected the rate of participation in the twin elections. Human Rights Watch concludes that the rate of participation in the twin elections in the northwest and southwest regions of Cameroon was very low compared to the rest of Cameroon.
And the National Youth Day was celebrated in Bamenda and other parts of the northwest region despite the security challenges as a result of the Anglophone crisis. And during the celebration in the Oku, in the town of Bamenda and elsewhere across the region, the presiding officials, notably government authorities, called on inhabitants of the northwest region to overcome the security challenges, to take themselves above lockdown and ghost towns. Bustela reports.
These youths, 10 of them, have been impacting their communities in various fields. As young entrepreneurs in the northwest region, the challenges are enormous and even worse with the ongoing Anglophone crisis.
A lot of time the government has promised and the government has really failed us. So we have no hope again to the government. But I'm one of the young persons in the Northwest who has never learned to give up. I believe in my abilities and in the abilities of young people. So what I ask myself is, what can I do for myself? And that is how I have lived my life all through. It's really been hard as a young person in the Northwest region for those young entrepreneurs to strive.
The feed we get is being imported from Nigeria. It's very expensive. We get a bag of feed for 18,000 francs. Secondly, fingerlings. To get fingerlings to stock a pound of 1,000 fingerlings, you need 200,000 francs. So it's not very easy for me to really pull up the tax.
During the celebration of the 54th Youth Day at the Grandstand Commission Avenue, excellence is rewarded.
We have celebrated their excellence today in Bamenda to give a strong message to the youth that if you endeavor hard, you will harvest the fruits of your work, your hard work. I'm therefore appealing to the youth of the Northwest region to take the lead in implementing that new status to harness the riches of the region, to improve on their living conditions, and to use the many opportunities that is given to them by government.
At the Tobin Grandstand, youth groups and associations commemorated the Youth Day in Kumbu, headquarters of Bui Division. A divisional headquarters where the phenomenon of ghost town, lockdown and school boycott are still effective. The Youth Day presented an opportunity for Lanywe Haringwani, Senior Divisional Officer for Bui, to emphasize the need for all hands to be put on deck for a return to normal life.
Because most of our children, most of our brothers and sisters who are in the bushes are the young ones who are wasting their future. So we seize this opportunity, and we hope that when they will get this message, they will be able to come out from the bushes and join us, so that we begin to build our beautiful division and our beautiful region. And this is an opportunity for us to say we have to do everything for our schools to all be opened. We have to do everything for the ghost towns to stop, and we have to do everything for our citizens to continue to carry out their social, their commercial, and their other activities in peace, in tranquility.
In Oku subdivision, a massive crowd turned out, rising above threats and lockdown calls, to give the ceremony at the Équinoxe ceremonial grandstand the colors befitting of a youth day. The divisional officer of Oku, Orok Benjamin Agbon, congratulates the inhabitants for their massive presence and cautioned them against listening to calls that only pulls them backward.
Administrative authorities in the northwest region of Cameroon expressing their determination to take the region out of troubled waters to facilitate the return to normalcy in the crisis-hit Anglophone region. And contrary to several parts of Anglophone Cameroon, where the turnout was timid as far as the celebration of the National Youth Day is concerned, it wasn't the case in Kambe. Even with insecurity in the Anglophone regions, inhabitants of Kambe in the Ndonga-Mantum Division, northwest region of Cameroon, came up in their numbers to celebrate the 54th National Youth Day at the Fon Ibrahim Japfu grandstand in Kambe, of course, and a total of 19 primary schools, 17 colleges, and 4 professional higher institutions of learning took part in the March Past exercise, and the schools were brought together from other youth day centers across the town of Kambe and Ndonga-Mantum Division. Speaking at the event, the senior divisional officer from Ndonga-Mantum Division, Simon Do Nkwenti, said that he was happy with the turnout, and of course we have greater details in this extract of the senior divisional officer of the Ndonga-Mantum Division and an elite of Kambe, Galajera. Take a listen.
You can see that we decided to bring in many innovations this year. We first of all decided to delocalize the various youth day centers in order to permit the minors also celebrate with bomb and pageantry in the quarters and villages. So that is why Kambe was able to host 11 youth day centers in order to permit the population celebrate within the spirit of the founding fathers of our nation, who decided to come together in their diversities to build a happy and united Cameroon, where every Cameroonian freely expresses himself, where every Cameroonian feels happy and glad for belonging to this wonderful nation.
I'm very, very happy, I'm very satisfied with the massive turnout. Once more, they've demonstrated again their support for the state by coming and massively to celebrate this day, 11th February. Despite all the calls by intended individuals to boycott, nobody boycotted 11th February in Kambe, as evident by the massive turnout. I'm very, very pleased that Kambe again has demonstrated the willingness to be alongside with the state to solve the problems that are plaguing the English and the two English regions of Cameroon. So I'm very, very happy and satisfied.
Coming up, we bring to you this heated exchange between Professor Maurice Kamto, National President of the Cameroon Renaissance Movement, and an Anglophone Cameroonian from Mancon in the northwest region of the country in Ontario, Canada, on the form of the state, which is the major issue at the center of the 3-year-long Anglophone crisis. Take a listen.
President Kamto, thank you for the hard work that you've done, for the bullets that you've taken for all Cameroonians. I'm Paul Tima, I'm from Mankon, Bamenda. I'm a very proud Anglophone, and like you, I'm very touched by this issue of the Anglophone crisis. I want to highlight that I'm not a militant of the MRC, but I'm a big sympathizer. I buy the vision of the party. But I have a problem with your position. I appreciate the fact that you stand for a federal system of government. I am a moderate. I align with somebody like Barrister Abuonkongo, but you seem to have issues with the 1961 federal system. And I personally, my knowledge, what I've learned, my circle of friends, a lot of Anglophones who identify themselves as moderates will not accept anything less than a two-state federal system. You said you would discuss with them, but your position seems to be tilted towards a 4 or 6 state. What if Cameroonians or Anglophones come on the table and say, Kamto, we need just a two-state federation?
Thank you very much, sir, for your testimony and your question. Thank you very much, because you give me the opportunity to come back to the issue and explain exactly our own position. The question is, let us assume that we go back to 1961 federalism, two-state federalism or federation. Okay? After having done so, will the Anglophones or the English-speaking state composed of Northwest and Southwest, will it be able to oppose the other part of Cameroon to organize itself as a federal state? That is the question. That's why my point is that I start with dialogue, negotiation, or whatsoever, call it what you want to call it. Dialogue with Anglophones. We agree on the federal system, the content they want to see in the federal system. Once we have done so, then I see how feasible is it to expand it to the rest of the country. That's my methodology. It's not that I will call all Cameroonians to come around the table and discuss the same content, because I clearly said that I acknowledge the fact that the English-speaking Cameroonians was the first to rise up and raise their issue and raise their case. And it is fair to start with them, to agree with them on the content of federalism. And then we see if the French-speaking Cameroonians want federalism, why should we be opposed to that? That's the only point. That's all. Assume that we go to Boya, we make discussion, or to Pamenda, or to Kumbo, Namfe, or Kuseri, and we agreed on something, two-state federalism. And afterwards, you have Francophones asking for their own federal state. Will you be opposed to that? I think it will be unfair, because you yourself fight for federalism and other people are asking for federalism. Will you be opposed? I don't think so. That's why I said it is an opportunity for us to discuss genuinely on the new form of government for our country, for a lasting solution for the development. Because the problem of development is not only Anglophones. Because in fact, I buy the Anglophone issue not only for the development reasons, but for the historical reason that Anglophone or English-speaking part of Cameroon went through a different experience than Francophone Cameroon. Then that we should take that into consideration. But after having done so, for the development aspect of it, I will allow Francophone who wants a federal system to have a federal system as well.
Professor Maurice Kamto, National President of the Cameroon Renaissance Movement, CRM political party, speaking there in Ontario, Canada, responding to a question from an Anglophone Cameroonian from Macon on the issue of the form of the state, a 10-state federal system, 4-state federal system, or 2-state federal system. Coming up next, Talking Point. We're receiving a senior legal mind, national president of a Reform Political Party, Barrister ASHU, Emmanuel. You're welcome.
Good evening, Babila. Good evening, televiewers. Nice to see you again.
What do you think about Professor Maurice Kamto's methodology as far as the form of the state, the issue of the form of the state is concerned?
Well, I can see clearly that Mr. Kamto is minded to drift towards decentralization, because when you hear him talking, he wants to give you the impression that he's talking about an eventual 10-state federation. But when you look at him, when you look at the way he presents his arguments, you see clearly that he is talking in the context of all the Cameroonians put together in a melting pot and discussing the issues, and you cannot do that except you are inside a unitary state. But he has said on several occasions that he stands for federalism. From what we just heard him say, you cannot withhold that assertion, because we see clearly that he is talking in the backdrop of a unitary system where they take Anglophones aside and take Francophones, and then they come and put everybody together now to say, okay, let us agree on what we have been discussing. That is not the question here. The question is, we have two territories that were UN trust territories, and by the status of the United Nations, all trust territories are supposed to gear towards independence. In the case of Cameroon, the two territories actually obtained independence. One on the 1st of January 1960, the other on the 1st of October. Now, the one that had independence of 1960 swallowed the second one. And that is where the problem is. We want the two parties to sit on the table.
Decided to come together.
The two parties should sit on the table and decide how they are going to live together. It is not a matter of us accepting the unitary state that has been put in place by force, by hook and crook, and you want people to swallow it and say that is where we start, and then from here now we are going to ask each person what he wants. You can hear Mr. Kamto's last question. If the other regions now say we also want a federal system, will you refuse that? Were the other regions states in 1961 and 1960? That didn't happen.
He was talking about that within the context of the question that came from the Anglophone Cameroonian from Mancon, in which he was indicating that there is a vast majority of Anglophone Cameroonians who want nothing less than a two-state federal system. And so he thinks that if we decide that, okay, let's give the Anglophone Cameroon a statehood, the other regions too will come up and say, okay, we want our own state. The Grand North with the three northern regions will also arise and say, we want our own state.
Mr. Babila, Southern Cameroons acquired statehood in 1948 when it became a semi-autonomous state. 1953, they walked out of the Eastern House of Parliament in Enugu and created their own assembly and government in Buea. 1961, 1st of October, they had independence that was recognized by the United Nations. It's a state. It had a government. It had all the structures of a state. So you cannot talk of statehood now that somebody is giving statehood. Southern Cameroon already has statehood. The problem is that government that existed in 1961 is no longer there. The people are phased out. They are all gone. In fact, it's only Mukete alone who is hovering around. All the others are dead. Even if they were there, the Republic of Cameroon has virtually taken over everything. So the problem now is to restore that state, because it exists in international law, but on the field it has been transformed into two regions of another state.
Restoring that state, is it synonymous to the struggle led by independence fighters?
No, sir. I say, you see, the independence fighters are looking for total independence. They are looking for total independence. What we have now is independence that was given in 1961 by the United Nations by joining the Republic of Cameroon. And as
independence in a federal system.
But it cannot be federal. Federal, you see, when you take a federal state, the federated states are not powerful states as such. It is a federal state that is in front. The federated states don't have certain powers on the international field. the real union that is feasible between two independent states is a confederation. You see, but like that speaker was saying, you can water it down and go to federated states. That one can be acceptable because each person will manage his own affairs. But if you want to respect the sovereignty of both states, it is a confederation. That is the right solution.
You will explain a little more the concept of confederation, the option of confederation. But first, there's a question that the Anglophone Cameroonian from Mancon was highlighting, the issue of 4-state, 10-state, 2-state, and he said that a vast majority of Anglophone Cameroonians want nothing less than a 2-state system, 2-state federal system. Can that solve the problem?
Yes, you see, if you say 2 states, 4 states, I want you to give me the legal background of that permits you to talk of 4 states or 10 states or 2 states. For 2 states, there exists a legal background. You go to independence. 1960, the Republic of Cameroon obtained independence on the 1st of January as a member state of the UN and became a member state of the UN. In fact, they voted during Resolution 1608 that concerned Southern Cameroon. They voted. So, inside that resolution, it was clearly said in Article 5 that the government of Southern Cameroon, the Republic of Cameroon, and the administering authority of, that is Great Britain, should sit to come together and batter out an arrangement that will determine in what manner the agreed policies or parties will be implemented. That was the Union Treaty. You see, so that is a basis that can tell you that the 2 states option has a legal backing. It is as far back inside the UN resolution that granted independence to Southern Cameroon in Article 2. The independence was clearly granted there in Article 2. But when you go now to talk of 4 states, do you have a legal backing? You talk of 10 states, do you have a legal backing that the other regions of the country today can become states? No. The right thing to do is that since the 2 independent states were not able to batter out a union treaty in 1961, they should do that now. Let us first of all batter out the union treaty. And then if you want, your own side now, you want to go and divide your side to other states, that is your business. But as regards the 2 states, the representatives of both sides, because that is what Mr. Kamto is covering, the representatives of Republic of Cameroon and representatives of Southern Cameroon should sit in that capacity and determine the conditions in which the 2 are going to live together.
Now, the confederal system, what's the difference between confederation and federalism?
Now, a confederation is a looser union than a federation, because in a confederation, most of each of the parties maintains most of its diplomatic powers. The strings linking the 2 are not very tight. It's a loose union. I'll take an example that we had recently: the Confederation of Senegal and Gambia. You see, it failed anyway. The Confederation of Senegal, Gambia. They remain 2 states, but they have issues where they interact. They may decide to have, well, maybe army coordination or those type of things. But in a federation, in the security and the defense, yes, in a federation, there are special regions that are reserved for the federated states. Like, for instance, if you go to Nigeria today, you take one of those federated states, they cannot have their own standing army. It is the federal government that has the standing army. Each state has to participate something in the running of the federal state. You see, in the diplomatic circle, it is the federal state that is known.
It's the federal system, the federal government
that decides. It's the federal government that is known outside. The others, they shove their ego behind and only watch the federal station as a government in front. But in the confederation, the states, the confederated states they manage their diplomatic affairs themselves.
That is, there is a greater degree of autonomy.
Autonomy, yes.
All right. The African Union sees that the turnout or the participation rate in the municipal and legislative elections of February 9, 2020 in Cameroon was very low in all the areas covered. And This is attributed to the security and political tensions in the country, notably in the northwest and southwest regions. Human Rights Watch goes in the same direction, accusing the Cameroon government of having failed to protect potential voters in those two regions, and explaining that this is why many of them decided to stay back home on election day. But the government, the Minister of Territorial Administration, says turnout was massive. What's your take on all this?
That was obviously a self-serving narrative. Turnout was massive. You see, I will not blame the government for failing to ensure security, because we all knew they could not do it, because for 3 years on now they have been unable to bring peace to southern Cameroons. Now the problem here is that in this type of situation we have two possible analyses. The one of people who think that we have an electoral code that should be applied. The electoral code says that, well, you go for elections, the person who wins wins, without providing a percentage, or like a quorum, a percentage of validity, or a quorum. Now, when you take that one, that is what the present government is trying to use. You will see that the African Union is really correct, because they're telling you that the percentage that participated in that election was very low. And in democracy is supposed to be government of the people, by the people. When you say by the people, you
and
mean
for the
that
people.
Let me remember, by the people. By the people, that's you. From amongst us, we take people who are going to govern. Now, in that by the people, you mean that the selection you are making is going to be in respect of the democratic principles. That is to say, the majority, the person who has the majority vote carries the day. That means the population, see, the populace that is supposed to participate in the vote is supposed to participate in a manner that covers all the nooks and corners of the country, so that everybody is supposed to be represented. But when you come and see that out of 6 million people who were supposed to vote, less than 1 million have participated, it is horrible. It simply means that we are going to be governed by a minority that was not voted by even up to 1/5 of the country's population. Because first of all, the 6 million is not even up to half of the population of the country. There are 6 million voters. Come to talk of the 1 million. If Cameroon is 22 or 25 million, it means that it is 1 million out of 25 million that is voting parliamentarians. No. So it's horrendous.
What's the impact of that on the credibility?
The credibility of the elections is not impaired, because the elections were well. You see, when you talk of credibility, we look at fairness, how the elections were organized. I don't think I saw any major problem, because there were some voters who had 2-3 cards, but those type of cases were not many. In the whole, you see, the organization was not bad, but the legitimacy, that is where the problem is. The legitimacy of these people who have been elected. How can a parliamentarian who is coming from Bonaberi call himself a representative of people when all the people who voted for Bonaberi were not up to 1,000? How is that possible? Take the number of people who actually participated in the vote. They were not up to 1,000. I visited polling stations, and look, I will tell you that in many of those polling stations, it was normal to see participation 25, 18, 30. When you reach 50, 40, 50, that was really heavy. There was massive boycott. So you cannot expect that you take somebody who does not represent even a small village to come and represent an entire division. That's not possible.
Now, apart from the fact that there were security and political challenges because of the tensions in the northwest and the southwest regions in particular, highlighted by the African Union and Human Rights Watch, the francophone parts of the country, is it voter apathy or the call for boycott by the CRM political party, CPP, Kabanwala, or people are completely disappointed with the whole system?
Well, those who called for boycott gave their reasons, and I think the population bought those reasons. One, people said you cannot be going to elections with war raging in the country. People are dying every day. You are going for elections. That's number one. Number two, the electoral code is a disgrace. Let us review it. These CPDM people are only wanting to renew their mandates. So they gave a deaf ear to all those calls. But the population decided to say that all these reasons that were put forward to justify a boycott were grounded. And they decided to stay at home. You see, that means that the population that is supposed to decide has seen that there is something wrong with the electoral system, and any government that is well-intentioned will have to review that electoral system before continuing anything else.
In the northwest and southwest regions of the country, where there were security challenges, and there are still security challenges, which Human Rights Watch says because of the failure of government to protect the people, they stayed in their homes. We, however, saw a kind of massive turnout, a significant turnout in some places like Kambe, where we are having some figures of close to 2,000 voters who turn out to vote and so on. And we also saw that voting took place in other parts of the regions, and we saw officials who were attacked by security forces on the way, for example, between Batibo and Bali, and all of that. When you look at all of these happenings, voting taking place in other places and other places, estimate, what's your reading of the actual perception of Anglophone Cameroonians as far as this election was concerned?
Well, you see, before the elections, the president said he was going to beef up the security presence to make sure that the elections are held. And he actually sent in something that was close to 10,000 soldiers. And soldiers, gendarmes and soldiers, because when they send 3-5 up, 3-5 down, well, you see, you look at the whole thing, include those who came in to meet those who were already there, is something like 10,000 that were already present in the field. Now, is that number enough to guarantee the safety of a population that is in millions? The answer is a visible no. Then, what is it that was preventing peace to reign? We have the Amber Boys who are well armed. And we saw it. And the population is saying that the government should bring this thing to an end. They should negotiate. And it is not because Amber Boys were behind every person that the doors were locked. No. If it were only for Amber Boys, on the days of Ghost Town, do you see Amber Boys behind the population? On that election day, did you see Amber Boys parading the streets in all the towns to force doors to be closed? Somebody asked the question on that election day, where are the soldiers? Because all the streets were dry. Where are the soldiers? We think that it is not just the inability of the soldiers to keep the peace. It is also the will of the people. I want to put a big part on the will of the people who think that things should be made right before they can go in for any meaningful elections. That is what I think was behind the massive boycott. If you talk of Nkambe, you said there was massive participation with something like 2,000. If you have ever been to Nkambe, you will give me the population of Nkambe. What is 2,000 compared to the population of Nkambe? Nkambe is not a town with less than 50,000 people. So if 2,000 out of 50,000...
sort of massive compared to other areas where there was nobody...
2,000 out of 50,000, that is nothing. It's insignificant. And from the figures that we saw, I didn't see 2,000. I saw lines of people, one line of people voting. That cannot be. I don't know where they saw that 2,000. But what I saw, if you tell me 100, I might say okay, because the line continued till evening. They were by 100, but 2,000, no. It's exaggerated.
All right. Barrister, before we go, we have said it again and again, but it's not a crime repeating. What should be done? What should be done now at this point in time?
At this point in time, we think that the thing that ought to have been done since by this government to end this crisis. Let us sit on the table and batter out a union treaty that will determine the terms of the union. It's as simple as that. There is no need for people to say who is on the other side. At first they were saying we are going to negotiate with who. But during the grand national dialogue, the major national dialogue, you saw that the Prime Minister sent letters of invitation to the interim government, the members of the interim government, showing that means that the government has recognized the interim government as speaking for Southern Cameroonians. So, since now that they have recognized them and they are inviting them officially, they should sit down on the table with them and iron out a union treaty that should end this nonsense. We don't want to see people dying every day. We want our country to stand back on its feet and let peace, security, and progress reign. War has never been a solution anywhere in the world. Instead, where war brings destruction, cry, suffering, pain, and suffering. So we think that the government should do something to meet the people that they know represent the Southern Cameroonian interim government and batter out the union treaty which they have failed to sign since 1961.
Barrister, some Anglophone Cameroonians are talking about what they call "let my people go," and they think that
total independence.
If the UN were to come in and organize a referendum, and the people say we don't want to be part of this country anymore, they should be allowed to go.
Mr. Babila, I will shock you. You see, people who think that way, I think they have lost their minds. If we were to decide today that we take the borders of Southern Cameroon and we organize a referendum and say Southern Cameroon should be a completely independent state, we shall be the first people to cry, because Southern Cameroon will remain a bilingual state, while Republic of Cameroon remains only francophones. Look, we have about 5 towns. If you take the real map, the border between the two, Bonaberi is in Southern Cameroon. Mbanga, Nkonsaba are in Southern Cameroon. Those are francophone towns. You see, so Southern Cameroon will remain a bilingual state.
But those are
you can never take away French from Southern Cameroon. So you see the solution.
But those are areas in the littoral region. Those are areas that are said.
I am telling you that if we take the real border, the boundary between Southern Cameroon and the Republic of Cameroon, it is not. Look, the boundary is not Mungo Bridge. It is Rome Point, Falaise Rome Point, 5 meters from the eastern bank of the Vuri. Please, there are United Nations documents on that. I am not the one defining it. So if you take those real border lines, you will see that we have a considerable francophone population that is in Southern Cameroon. So we shall remain, we can never have a typically Anglo-Saxon state. We shall remain a bilingual state of French and English. Why this last side will remain French? So why do you want to leave a big bilingual state to go to a small one? It doesn't make sense. You see, I think that we should fix the area where we are so that we can all live well and live peacefully, instead of trying to break away to go and still have the same situation. We shall still have francophones there, because I tell you, I say Bonaberi is Southern Cameroon. Mbanga and Konsama, they are also, look at the map, you see it.
Senior Barrister ASHU Emmanuel, member of the Cameroon Bar Association and National President of Reform Political Party. Thanks for coming.
You're welcome, Babila.
Thanks, ladies and gentlemen, for staying with us. That's it for today.